is worried about losing their job, certainly connect with the department, but that is not the approach that we'll be taking.
Tonight, billions of dollars in proposed cuts to Indigenous Services Canada are causing concerns.
We raise our hands to each and every one of you. We want to also say, check Quinman Tomia to all those who made this building possible to be moved over here.
A schoolhouse from the early 1900s has a new home in BC that is used to teach the younger generation their language and culture.
My palms were sweaty. It was my first time having my hair and makeup done, and I was worried that I was going to sweat all my makeup off before the show started.
And a Casca model from northern British Columbia is getting their chance to walk the runway in Europe. Good evening, I'm Savannah Kelly. Welcome to APTN National News. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is adding its voice to concerns over proposed budget cuts at Indigenous Services Canada. According to departmental plans, more than $4 billion is expected to be cut from ISC starting with the 2025-26 fiscal year. In a press release, AMC Grand Chief Kathy Merrick called the proposed cut unacceptable and irresponsible when First Nations are already in a constant state of emergency dealing with mental health and addiction crises. Just last week, the federal NDP was calling on the Liberals to reverse what they say is a $7.6 billion cut to Indigenous services in this year's budget that will be delivered on April 16th. The future cuts also include the elimination of nearly 1,000 jobs at the department. Grand Chief Merrick called the proposed cuts morally reprehensible. The departmental plans include a net decrease in funding for Jordan's Principle. APTN News asked Minister Haidu about possible cuts, particularly to Jordan's Principle, at an announcement she made in Whitehorse on February 23rd. Haidu said it was, quote, absolutely not true. The minister said ISC had to go through the process of finding efficiencies, but that Jordan's Principle would not be touched. Haidu said savings were found in things like legal fees for the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal.
Act is undergoing a review right now in general about how we can become more efficient, because the claims have grown by 150% just over the last year, which is a good problem to have. It means kids are getting care that they need, and the communities are becoming aware of Jordan's Principle and are using the program, but it is putting pressure on getting approvals through quickly, and we won't be able to achieve that if we reduce staffing. So that's not accurate, and whoever is worried about losing their job, certainly connect with the department, but that is not the approach that we'll be taking.
Minister Haidu was unavailable for an interview today. A statement from the minister's press secretary said the Liberal government has never and will not be in the business of making cuts to services to Indigenous people. The statement says the department is targeting operational efficiencies, public servant travels, and departmental transformation. You can read much more on this story over on our website at aptnnews.ca. The mass stabbing attacks on James Smith Cree Nation that took place September 4th, 2022 has resulted in 33 recommendations for change to various institutions to prevent similar deaths from happening in the future. A National Joint Board of Investigation released an additional 14 recommendations for Correctional Service Canada and the Parole Board of Canada yesterday. James Smith Cree Nation says they were not included in those discussions. We're joined by Chief Robert Head of Peter Chapman Band, one of the 3 bands that makes up James Smith Cree Nation. Welcome to APTN National News, Chief Head. We're all very sorry for your community's loss.
Thank you.
So 47 recommendations have been made. What do you think is the most important thing you can do to protect yourselves as a community?
Our First Nation, the most important thing that we are doing as we speak is our security, our own internal security service. It's something that's not permanently funded by the government in Canada, but we're working on achieving permanence for our security service. So we have a 24-hour service that has many individuals, working in the First Nation. We have our own security trucks and our own gear, and we have our people trained, and they're providing security in the nation. And that's the number one thing that we can do to protect ourselves at this moment.
And what do you think are the main reasons behind what Miles Sanderson did?
Well, Miles Sanderson is, a unique individual, or was a unique individual, and there was many factors that worked together to create that individual person, and a lot of that was his upbringing and his use of alcohol and drugs in his life, and they just combined to that where he went on that rampage, and it's just unfortunate that our community was there at his during his rampage. He had to do it here. But the one thing that we were always pointing at was justice system in Canada. 80% First Nations people in these institutions all across Canada. Little supports for them when they're released from prison or jail. They don't have no homes available to them. They don't have the programs and services that they need to keep on the good path of life. They have very little in that kind of support. Plus, while they're in the institutions, they need programs and services in there too. Like rehabilitation means, working with the individual on a case-by-case basis and identifying where they need help. Do they need anger management? Do they need alcohol and drug treatment? What their specific problems is, that it should be addressed right in the institution and followed up in aftercare programs, in the community or the First Nation. And then the First Nations themselves, we need to have our seat at the table, parole board, in order for us to provide input into what's happening with our memberships that are being considered for release. So we have to have our seat at the table, and that's something that's not happening at this moment. There's very little First Nation participation in any of the parole board decisions, and we need to have individual First Nations represented at those tables when their membership are coming up for parole, so that we can have our inputs into that process ourselves. So those are some of the ideas that we have in regards to reform of the justice system.
And out of all of those 47 recommendations, was there anything left out that you feel should have been included?
Well, the 47 recommendations are still under review from our nation. Like, we have a formal process to go through with the membership where we, have all the recommendations presented and we discuss them, and then we can talk about the shortcomings where, where the membership feel that they have left out certain items. We have had some immediate reactions from, the community members at large here, but, we haven't had a formal process where we've taken the recommendations and walked through them with the membership. So that's something that we're looking to do in April, and until we do that, we're gonna just tell the membership, provide their feedback into that.
Well, we'll have to leave it there, Chief Head, but thank you very much for taking some time to speak with us today.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You as well. Do you feel community policing will prevent a similar tragedy to the 2022 mass stabbings on James Smith Cree Nation from happening in the future? You can weigh in on this and other questions by voting in this week's poll on aptnnews.ca. We'll be bringing you new sets of questions each week to see what you think about the issues that matter to you. The RCMP is going ahead with their plans to roll out body-worn cameras on its Nunavut officers. The decision follows over a year of field testing. According to the RCMP's website, a second and final round of testing started in early February, but there's no set time when this will roll out. In 2020, the RCMP surveyed 70 people in Iqaluit. 69% were in favor of the cameras, saying they increased their trust in police. However, the force says not many in their survey were Inuit. Nationally, the RCMP are expected to procure between 10 and 15,000 body cameras. Nunavut RCMP did not respond to requests for comment before airtime. After the break, we'll bring you some highlights from the 2024 Arctic Winter Games underway in Alaska. Stick around. Welcome back to APTN National News. The 2024 edition of the Arctic Winter Games in Matsu, Alaska is underway. Athletes from Alaska, Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, Nunavuk, Sampi, and Greenland are setting records and beating personal bests. Our reporter Charlotte Morit-Jacobs brings us these highlights.
It was another jam-packed day for the Arctic Winter Games in Matsu, Alaska. All 22 sports were in action in the friendly but competitive tournament. Athletes from across the circumpolar north took to the snow and slopes in Hatcher Pass and Anchorage's Kincaid Park. As of airtime, host region Alaska is holding on in top medal standings with 82 Ulus. Yesterday, they claimed victories in sports such as alpine ski, cross-country ski, and mixed wrestling. Team Yukon held strong in second place with 53 Ulus. They clinched winning scores in Arctic sports such as kneel jump and biathlon ski. And in third, Team Northwest Territories with 35 Ulus, who shone in sports such as short track speed skating and table tennis. Despite top medal counts, it was Team Nunavut with the biggest comeback, ending yesterday with 10 extra Ulus, half of which were gold, bringing their total hardware count to 17. Arctic Bay athletes stood proudly on all three podium spots for their tremendous showmanship in snow stake, men's U18 in the Dene Games category. And they earned a respectable gold Ulu for women's open 2-foot high kick. Nunavummiut athletes also played their best in table tennis, earning 3 gold Ulus. Yesterday was a demonstration about how the games are about working together and even learning from opponents. The competition brings nearly 2,000 athletes and coaches together to keep traditions alive. Sports crucial to maintaining collective social identity and communicating traditional values and cultures. Charlotte Morit-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Now to North Vancouver, British Columbia, where a schoolhouse from the early 1900s has been transformed into a place for the Squamish Nation to teach the younger generation their language and culture. APTN's Tina House has this story.
This area here, we do a lot of imaginary play, a lot of hands-on play with toys, which is why we refer it to the Squishetso Taiken, as you can see on the wall here. It's a lot of one-on-one interaction immersed. So we speak little to zero English. This is our immersion home for our people.
Originally built in 1912, this building, formerly known as the Little Yellow Schoolhouse at the Henry Hudson School in Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood, was set for demolition after a new school was built. But in 2023, the Squamish Nation bought it for $1, with the intention of creating a language nest for their nation. So, after being loaded onto a special semi-truck and then sent across the ocean by barge to North Vancouver, it finally arrived at its permanent home on the Capilano Reservation. After renovations and decoration, it officially opens today. For Squamish Nation Councillor Anne Wannock, it's a proud day for the entire Squamish Nation.
And we raise our hands to each and every one of you. We want to also say, Chek Quinman Tomiya, to all those who made this building possible to be moved over here for our Munmun, our children, and Equato, all of our families.
Squamish Nation members and their families, including babies and toddlers, are welcomed into the nest to learn the language and immerse themselves into their culture. Kaya Williams is one of the teachers. She says it's an amazing feeling to see the younger generation speak their language.
It makes me feel really proud because mostly I always think of our ancestors who weren't given that chance. Mainly I always think of my late father who attended Indian day school, and he was always so proud to speak everything that he learned and would come home and teach to me. So to be able to do that full circle.
All of this is part of the Canadian government working with churches for the assimilation process and being able to remove the language and culture, and our old people held on to it and went underground and kept our language and culture so that now we're flourishing as a nation.
In 2010, the Squamish Nation only had 10 fluent speakers at that time. Now, thanks to various initiatives from the nation, they have saved their language from extinction. Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
We need to step aside for one more short break. Still to come, we'll tell you about an up-and-coming Casca model's journey from his small northern community to the runway in Italy. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Shania Murdoch shared this photo of a foggy downtown Winnipeg. Spring often brings some morning fog to the city, and Shania found this particular morning a little spooky. Thanks for sharing that photo, Shania. If you have a picture to share across Turtle Island, send that photo to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting off on the east coast, 7 degrees in Halifax, snowy and +6 for Fredericton. Kuujjuaq, 0 degrees and snow, La Grande River, -4. Val-d'Or, snowy and 5 degrees there, Montreal, +12. Peterborough, rainy and 12 degrees, Ottawa, +13. Snowy and +1 for Kapuskasing, Wawa, mix of sun and cloud, 5 degrees. Churchill, mostly sunny and -12, Thompson, snowy and -2. Winnipeg, snowy and +2 there, Barons River, 0 degrees. Swift Current, snowy and +5, North Battleford, +2. Stony Rapids, mix of sun and cloud, 2 degrees, La Ronge, +6. 7 degrees for Grand Prairie, sunny and 8 degrees in Fort McMurray. Calgary, +8 there, Edmonton, +11 and sun. Tofino, mix of sun and cloud, 10 degrees, Quesnel, +11. Prince George, rainy and 9 degrees there, Dease Lake, +7. Whitehorse, snowy and 4 degrees, Old Crow, -23. Wrigley, flurries and -16 there, Norman Wells, -20. Colville Lake, mix of sun and cloud, -20, Tuktoyaktuk, -24. Baker Lake, sunshine and -23, Nauyat, -27. Iqaluit, snowy and -12 there, Arctic Bay, -20. A Casca model from northern British Columbia is still reeling after getting the opportunity of a lifetime. Kieran Schilling recently got the chance to strut his stuff on a runway in Europe and show off some First Nations fashions while doing it. As Sarah Connors tells us, the emerging model has overcome adversity in order to make his dreams come true.
Can you look down at me?
Kieran Schilling is a relative newbie in the modeling world.
Keep looking this way.
But you wouldn't know it when he's on the runway. In February, Schilling walked his first fashion show in Milan, Italy.
My palms were sweaty. It was my first time having my hair and makeup done, and I was worried that I was going to sweat all my makeup off before the show started.
The 28-year-old is Casca and a member of the Liard First Nation from the community of Lower Post in northern BC.
And then look down at me.
In January, Yukon designer Natasha Peter put out a call for a male model for her label Casca Dina Designs.
Look in that direction over there.
Despite having hardly any experience, Schilling took a chance and applied. Peter says he beat out 17 other male models for the spot.
He was amazing. I loved his energy and his personality, his humor. It was just great working with him.
Can you look right at me?
Prior to modeling, he worked at a mine in northern BC, but knew it wasn't his calling. Last year, he moved to Vancouver for a fresh start.
I started to make some changes in my life for the better so I could build on making my life into something that I love.
Schilling says that includes living a more authentic life. After coming out as Two-Spirit 6 years ago, he's embracing his identity with his community's support.
A lot of people really supported me and they're really happy for me as well.
Those are great shots. All right, I'll get you to stand right in the middle here.
While he's a natural in front of the camera, Schilling is still early in his career. In October, he started reaching out to photography groups on Facebook. That led to a gig modeling clothes for an online luxury consignment store. His focus now is to build his portfolio and hopefully get more exposure.
It's really broadened my horizon, and I really want to go travel to more different countries and, show them what a beautiful Casca looks like.
Peter is confident he has what it takes to go a long way.
I definitely believe that he has it in him to pursue the modeling, and I would love to see an Indigenous male model go far.
As he continues to try to establish himself in the industry, Schilling hopes his story inspires others.
Whatever it is, chase and follow your dreams and make your life into something that you love.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News.
First Nations and conservation advocates have welcomed a Northern Territory government proposal to create a coastal reserve national park that will protect land that has cultural and environmental significance. But they're disappointed the government has refused to buy back a parcel of land slated for a controversial housing development. This story is from our friends at National Indigenous Television in Australia.
When bulldozers moved in last year to clear land at Lee Point on Darwin's outskirts for a Defence Force housing project, it led to protests by Larrakia traditional owners and environmentalists. Traditional custodians say the trees and land have cultural significance, as well as it being home to endangered species such as the Gouldian finch. Now the government is proposing to create a coastal reserve national park, but it doesn't include the housing development land.
With the national park development process, it has its own strict level of criteria and regulation that would need to be adhered to should any development proposal be placed.
The developers have agreed to pause the project until the federal court rules on the cultural heritage claim. Environmentalists aren't convinced by the Territory government's plan.
Wildlife doesn't just stop at a boundary, it moves through as food and things, flowers and insects, so they don't recognise boundaries of national parks.
And if you take out a big chunk of their habitat, the park might not support them anymore. Unless they, put their money where their mouth is and actually direct money into managing that park, I'd say it really is just window dressing.
A decision on the cultural heritage claim may not be forthcoming until mid-year. Glenn Trowbridge, NITV News.
And that's all the time we have for your midweek news. For news anytime or to weigh in on our weekly poll questions, visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Savannah Kelly. Marcy Miigwech, thank you for joining us this evening. Take care and have a great night.